Okay, let's continue. I changed my mind about vectors. No vectors. Instead, let's just say yeah, but then what? So now I have to find the shader resource declaration context. But yeah, that should be an element of shader input data, isn't it? Declaration context. So just that thing here. And then what I want to do is increment the next binding for the given set. Isn't that something pretty damn close to update binding? Except here I'm passing a resource, shader resource. I don't have that. Don't have that. Do I need a shader resource here? I'm getting that set. Yes, I need it for this. Okay, let's add that later then. Kind of got lost. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? I was adding something. I think reserve. Damn it. Okay, that is not working. Oh, wait, I was in a different, I was here, different window. Let's put this on stream health. So. I think I'm just pausing it all with the same function name. Why am I suddenly in add texture? Because I didn't rename it yet. Okay. This is reserve binding. And I'm just going to pass that on reserve binding. Might as well inline it in, right? So let's go to the, put it in the header. Let's put it below add texture. What? D2 colon. Yeah, what? Reserved binding, set index is pass it on. Reserved. It's a shader resource. Reserve one binding in. Reserve one shader resource binding in set. In set index or just for set index. Whatever, as long as it is clear. So now I need to add the same thing then for, or rather to this class, shader resource declaration context. Let's add it here. Then update binding, let's add it here. And then we do the same things here. next binding is less than set index. Yeah, and that should then be this one, except that I'm always adding one in this case. I could do a plus plus here, but let's see. This should work. Let's put it on a tab column or whatever. What's with all the motors outside? Noisemakers. No viable conversion from int to descriptor set index. Pum, 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 pum. I worked half an hour on making my chair not creak anymore, especially for you guys. The creak that you just heard was something else. Okay, this is better, I suppose. Use of undeclared identifier descriptor. Did you mean vulkan descriptor? Okay. So now if you run this, Let's see what it compiled. What the hell? Oh, it's not visible anymore now, of course. So something went wrong. Pretty sure this now should have been a 1. Interesting. No, not. This is IMU. Yeah, so it worked. Binding is now 1. Awesome. So I generated layout, set is 0, binding is 1. For and I gave it a name, U texture of word 3. Translated from texture of word 3, which was also replaced here. And as you can see, this is what it should be. So maybe that's why it quadrums. Set is wrong. Also, I have spaces here, which maybe not allowed. I'm not even sure. Well, probably is, because that works as well. What is the convention? Spaces or no spaces? Let's add spaces. If it is allowed, then why not? So yeah, I have spaces here for the set. And I might as well add spaces here for the binding. So this is in the resource declaration context generate declaration. Now why is it not just called generate? It's already a declaration. Like using the same name twice if it is already in the class name. Oops. Names are so important, really. They are so important that I put a lot of time into it. So you see here is being called, and I already have declaration here. But then you get declaration context generates. Yeah, that would work for me. Why not? Strangely enough, this is the only place where it is being used. Seriously, well, even more so, I would say. So let's rename all of them. That means that substitute percentage generate declaration becomes generate, and well, also in this file and in this file. And then the next file. And then the next file. Yeah, telling you that they are all different files, really. 24, even this is a different file. And the last one. Okay, so the set number is wrong. Why is the set number wrong? Because all my sets are still starting at 0. Let me see that again. It's still slightly annoying that it's just stopping here at yeah, and what? And at an assertion false, while it doesn't even compile, I think. Or maybe it does. I'm not sure anymore what I wanted to do here. Look at the output, I guess. Print realized descriptor set layouts. Just printing a handle. That's not useful. That's the handle. So generate and descriptor set layout is a map with key, and then that's in the key. So we have a map with a single element, because it's only printing one thing here. I print the whole map, I think. This should probably print a key as well, but then you get just the same information as I already have here. So we have binding 1 was added and binding 0 was reserved. And binding 1 is the combined image sampler for the fragment shader. Well, this was about the ordering. The ordering. There's nothing I can say about the ordering when there is only one element. Yeah, that's problematic. I really should implement uniform buffers as well, because this test is about uniform buffers, and these things are uniform buffers. And then I'm passing the set layouts. This thing only has a single set layout, where the uniform buffer is still missing. This is so not going to work. I think I'll keep this whole program broken until it actually implemented the uniform buffers as well. Otherwise, make it even harder, I think. But it doesn't mean that I cannot fix the set that went wrong. So, okay, we crash here, or the assert here. But the generated code is also wrong. This should be set 1. So I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, I was walking half an hour to my parents and back, and while I was walking, I was thinking about this problem, and I had a following idea. I'm gonna go full color wood solution, which is you know, shooting with a Canon on a Mosquito, 100% flexible, over-engineered. That was the idea, and I'm going to implement that right now before I forget what I thought of. The different window might be nicer. And this belongs, I think, in the descriptor. My idea was to make something that refers to a descriptor set, but you don't know which one. So let's say A is such a thing. A refers to a descriptor set. Then I can have a B, which also refers to a descriptor set. Then what you don't know if A or B point to a different descriptor set or to the same descriptor set. Furthermore, they must be kind of static. So they could be, say, actually an integer. But I'm going to need a name for it. Now I already have an integer that refers to descriptor sets, and that's the set index here. It's just a size type. But that one is really unique. I mean, two different set indexes refer to different descriptor sets, so they are not the same. Okay, so I need a name. What shall I call those things that are integer-like and they refer to a descriptor set, but you don't really know what it is yet, just that it is a descriptor set. So if I use A here and then later I use A again, then it's the same descriptor set. That's what I know. That's the only thing I want to know. Names are important, so we're going to think for an hour now to come up with a good name, unless someone types in the chat a good idea. Or I can ask on IRC, of course. Never let a good question go to waste. I need a name for a class that represents some instance of another class, say foo. Without that, two different instances of that class. Let's give it a name. We need a class, t. Whether the two different instances of t mean that they refer to different instances of foo. Suppose it's much like a pointer. In other words, no, what is it? E.g., for example. Pointer P1 and foo pointer P2 could point to different or the same foo. However, I don't want to use pointer in my class name. Because instead of a pointer, I'm going to use an unique integer. And then can be used in a map or something. Yeah, I thought of it. Yeah, while is usually hostile, so that's a normal remark for him. Alifa is a really super nice guy who is always helping and has the best ideas. I think like 90% of difficult questions that I ask are answered by him. ID. Is it an ID? Maybe it is an ID. TH. Del thesaurus tardish. ID is short for identifier, I think. This is not working. I need a thesaurus for coding. It's really missing on the internet. Attribute is something of coding. Qualifier, no. You have descriptors. Yeah, why is it here descriptive and descriptor is not there? This is a noon. The whole descriptor thing is wrong. Do they not even know what descriptor is? They do. Well, strange. Even Alifa is not helping. This is one of the things I cannot stand. This design sounds weird and maybe you should rethink it. What does he know? I renamed everything. I call it foo and tea. And just because he cannot think of an English name, it's a weird design? What? He doesn't know what I'm talking about even. That's so stupid. Don't tell me it's a weird design. Based on what? I have good reasons for this. And every time if someone says something like that based on nothing, and I start to explain then what I'm really working on, then you'll only get more shit. Well, not really von Oliva. I mean, no bad words about him. So I don't know. But I'm not going to defend that. Coding synonyms. That's probably synonym for coding. Yeah, doesn't exist. It's not what I want. I think it's pretty clear that I not want that. Otherwise I would have typed programming synonym. That was asked 10 years ago. Yeah, it's a bit limited. This. Maybe I should call it key. I mean, that's overloaded. But the keys are different as usual, but they give access to something. And I don't know, you have to use something. is key. Not sure this guy understands what a thesaurus is, because everything was just a single name instead of a whole list of stuff. So what is the idea here? Not found. Damn it. A bit too minimal. Basically does not exist. No. Okay, so guess I already did it. I don't know. Let me search for thesaurus key. Yeah, so the word index is here, but I already have an index. And the pointer is here as well. And I said that wasn't a pointer. So yeah. Let's look at the pointer now. Pointer arrow, yeah. Director. There's the ID indicator. Hello, Kempt. I need a good word for something, for a class. As usual. I need a word for something that gives access to a certain type, a known type, but you don't know which instance. So two of them that are different might or might not give access to the same instance. So thinking about key, so you have two different keys, they might still point to the same thing. Or not. What do you think is a good word? Well, I can really spend an hour on this, but let's pick key then, because I really don't see any other better option. It said, because it's not clear at all what it means from the word itself. So we have a descriptor key. And then I'll just have to explain here in detail what I mean by that. A key is static. Is that the right word? Each key is a unique identifier that I'll use the word that I just used, that gives access. I could say that points to, but I really want to avoid the word point. So it gives access to a a descriptor set in the context of a given shader oops, what was the name? Why can I not remember that? Shader input data. Oh boy, You're behind on me. So if anyone knows a better word than key. Okay, so I want this to be based on a unique identifier. That's what it says in the comment. Which means that I just create a new key and then out of the blue it's going to be unique. How do we do that? Well, I have something that supports that in utils, I think, although I cannot remember anymore, of course, or what the thing is called. Utils. It's starting to become a lot. That's unique ID, so that's probably what I meant. Let's have a look at that. At the moment my memory gets so bad that I cannot even remember anymore that I have something already. And then that's the time that I really have to stop coding, I guess. And then 2 days later I die, I hope. Why is there no description how this thing needs to be used? A pause, yeah, that was actually the thesaurus, and it said passport, which I didn't like, but just pass is a possibility. Yeah, I'll keep key, I think, for now anyway. Okay, so this unique thing here, this unique ID, not suddenly an ID, so I could use ID as well, that was suggested to me on IRC. That is based on some type. I don't know if that has to be an... Yeah, it must be something that works together with atomic, so some kind of integer. I'll just use a size type, I think. So, unique ID size type. Yeah, from utils. And this is a private thing, and suddenly I really don't care anymore that much about the name. It's hidden anyway. So this was very important for me. It's for the users to use it. But this, no, I could call it key, but yeah, key, of course a key has a key, and this is the only internal state that I'm going to have. But I rather call it whatever it is according to its type. I could call it unique ID actually. But no. Utils / unique ID, not H. Then at the moment this thing is created. We call a constructor, and then we have to pass a context. And well, the unique ID context. The non-integral version is not thread safe, but we're using size type, so that is thread safe. I'm using this one. Standard integral, so this is an integral. Size type is an integral. Yes. So we pass the context within which it must be unique. And yeah, I'll just have to call getID on it. A batch is also a nice trick. You have a public function, and then one of the arguments is a batch something. Then this can only be called, if it's a function or a constructor in this case, by this class. It's like an inverted friend. I mean, like, now this class says that that class is a friend, but only for this function. So the unique ID context can call this function. It cannot access MID. It's not a real friend. So it's better than a friend. It's more specific. And the batch is also funny because you know, it's like a batch that gives you access, and the way you do that is by passing this, and that looks like a batch. But it's a funny thing. So this is the batch with which gives it access. That's the first argument, so that's going to create this batch. The first argument. It's default created. Also part of utils. So yeah, I'm going to call getID on whatever is being passed. Sorry, keep getID is not const. So I'm passing this by reference. I'm just causing the that's using it, calling it context. Sorry. And then we initialize MID, which is a unique ID with context get ID. And it's thread safe. So no matter how many threads create keys, they will all be unique. They'll get us a different unique ID. So now, if this description is correct, we have fulfilled the first part. Each key is a unique identifier. Still have to implement the next part that gives access to a descriptor set. Now between commas, in the context of a given shader input data, which means that the shader input data must own the context. So I'll have to add this to the shader input data objects. And that is shader resource specific, right? So I'm just going to add it here. So this is a shader resource specific keys context. So then each shader input data object has its own context for the keys. And then we have to pass this to the constructor of such a key. Where two different keys, well, every key is different, can refer to the same descriptor set, even even though they are different. So need to be implemented that it gives access to a descriptor set. Let's think about that for a bit. I think the shader input data has to take all that responsibility again. This is such a huge class, it starts to be ridiculous. And the name, I'm starting to doubt that the name is correct, although I already renamed it. Forgot what the previous name was, but okay. Maybe it's better to add something to the shader input data that is going to manage all of this stuff. So that new object then will contain our unique ID context instead of just adding the ID context itself. And that same object then can convert our keys to I guess a set index. Set index is already what is you know, one-on-one representing a descriptor set. So that's like a map between these keys and set indexes. So I suppose I can call that key to set index map or something like that, or is that map a bit too much then? So let's name this more like identifier. Key to set index. Simply maps, I guess. Manages is also a good word, but let me stick to map at the moment. Maps identifier keys to identifier set indexes. Key to set index. utils, where am I? Descriptor. So key to set index, which then is going to contain that namespace vulkan identifier. How many viewers do I have? 2. Okay, so that makes sense then to explain something. If you have the feeling that I'm adding a lot of different classes, then you have the right impression, and that is the way you should code. A C++ program, you cannot have enough classes. As long as they have good names, good documentation and comments, and especially good names, then it does exactly what you want. Object orientation splits your code into different objects, well-defined different objects. One of the reasons that coding in C++ is so slow is because you usually need a lot of classes before you can even start doing something. The fundament of every project is large. Let's think 1,000 lines of code at least. Which of course is why I wrote the libraries that I have been written. And then you're talking about maybe 100,000 lines of code. Because what I noted was that what is so much needed when you write a C++ program, that is basically just the fundament, the what you say, the thing that you build a house on or your program on. And I did write all that stuff, and it is almost finished, although it took me 20 years to write it. So now all kinds of other libraries exist that more or less overlap with what I did. And I cannot honestly say that my stuff is the way to go. But anyway, that was the idea. So if you go to my repositories, then you have the utils, of course. Lots of things that most of them are just standalone things that do something that is handy and or can be used in many places without that now is super specific. And then I have a thread pool. Probably this is the next one. AI thread saves is a very beautiful standalone Git submodule that allows you to use objects that are locked by mutex, either simple mutex or read-write mutex, and different kinds of mutexes, spin lock mutex or actual mutex, etc., etc. And then make that really safe way. So it's a lot less likely that you make errors using this library. So yeah, I do believe that this is better to use this than not to use it, if you understand what I mean. In fact, I never declare mutex anymore. All my mutexes come from this library. I only use this library to declare variables and objects that must be protected against concurrent access. Very powerful. And then of course you have well, libcwd, yeah, that's my debugging library, and you should use that in conjunction with CWDS. So the best thing to understand how to use that is by looking at example programs, which means just another repository. So everything with test suite behind it, and then the simplest one is utils test suite. Guess it's all the way down here. Well, that's way down. It's too far down. I don't know. Somewhere there's a utils test suite. So I have AI utils, and there must be a test suite for that as well. I don't see it. So here's an AI stateful task test suite, but that, oh, here it is. So if you clone this one, you have a complete working something. The other things that I pointed out, they are not standalone things. You need a lot of stuff around it. So then this is a good way to see how to use it. You could just clone this and configure and compile it, and then you'll know how to use debugging stuff and the utils stuff. And then if you want to add one more thing, you can do this. So that's the same as that, but then also includes the thread safe GitHub submodule, and contains tests that specifically are for the thread safe. Then the next step is the EVIO test suite, which then also includes I/O, is event-driven I/O. This has support for sockets, TLS socket, Unix socket, signals, pipes, files, of course, listen socket. It is Linux specific. I'm using EPOL, which is Linux only, and I'm pretty sure it's using Vutex, which is also Linux specific. It's written for speed. It's absolutely insane fast compared to most, if not all, other libraries. The downside is that it is a very difficult API. So it's the reason that it's so difficult is because if you want speed, you must do concessions. You cannot just write an API, an application programmer interface that a programmer is using. That is, down to earth, simplistic. Because if you do that, then you get slow stuff. That's why the other libraries in my eyes are slow. So keeping in mind that I wanted to have something that is as fast as possible, you get a kind of demanding API. And I guess that the best way to learn how to use it is, I hardly have documentation, unfortunately. So you'll just have to look at the EVO test suite. So I guess the tests are in test here. So there's some examples here. HTML pipeline server fixture. Don't ask me how it works, but it is. There's some tests here. Output stream, ref count release, socket address, print host entry. Probably requires some study, but yeah, you can do all your I/O with it, and timers as well, I think. No, timers are part of the thread pool. So I have another repository which is called thread pool. Well, same thing, insane fast, powerful and difficult to use. And that contains timers. I did write some documentation, by the way, but that documentation is for the use it all. AI stateful task is, yeah, again, insanely powerful something which uses everything. Well, you cannot see that here. It should go to the test suite. AI stateful task test suite. Yeah. So it uses CWDS, so the debugging stuff, CMake configure stuff, events, EVIO that we just looked at, and stateful task itself, of course, and also thread pool and thread safe and utils. And then on top of that, a few Git submodules that are tasks. So this is the engine for the tasks, and the test suite then contains all those tasks as well. So I have a fire log task, a hello world task that shows how to use it. The resolver task that does DNS lookups in an asynchronous way. Normally DNS lookups are always blocking, but I hate blocking, so I wrote absolutely everything in a non-blocking way. So if you get this, then you can do non-blocking DNS lookups. Socket task. I have more tasks than this by now, but they are not all included here. I have some tasks that are used by the Linux viewer that I'm working on in the stream normally. So and the XML RPC task is more recent. I have an XML test suite that's perpendicular to it. It's some XML support. Yep. So the Linux viewer here is what we are working on, and as you can see, that uses all the same thing, but also dbus task. That does the I/O for communication with the dbus, and resolver task. I think we already saw, yeah. And then I have all the others: stateful task, thread pool, thread safe, utils, XCB task. That's also a new one. XCB is the Linux specific interface for Windows. The things on your screen. It does on your screen. It does use XML and the XML RPC task. And we are always working in source zone, so you don't see all of those things. But yeah, that's the fundament. I think that almost every C++ program needs. Every program these days needs a thread pool, and they need debugging, and they need I/O, which is thread safe and parallel and etc. etc. And this is work of 20 years. And I think it's starting to get finished, which is why now I finally started working on something more specific, graphics in this case. Because as soon as I need something, down to earth, that every C++ program needs, then I already have it. One of these other submodules. Okay, that was my intermezzo about my, what is a good word? Fundament is one thing, but there's a better word for it. Bad with words. So you see, you see me often use something from utils and never from EVIO, because I'm not doing any socket coding or not using pipes yet. If I really would write a program that uses graphics but also has a networking interface to, say, connect to a virtual world and uses HTML to download textures and stuff like that, then I'm going to use EVIO heavily, of course. But now we're just doing graphics, so there is no I/O at all. Unique ID.h, I think it was. Yeah, this is going to be a new class, and I call that class now. By default everything is private, but it's just my habit to make that explicit by adding the private. Okay. Well, this is the context, the unique ID context, but I also wanted to be able to map the keys, the unique things, to the set indexes. I'm just going to use a map, I think. Let me think. There's probably a faster way, because those unique keys are relatively small. So I could use a vector-based flat map or something like that. But then again, if it doesn't need to be extremely fast, then it doesn't need to be fast at all. As soon as it matters a little bit the speed, then I want everything. Then I'm not even going to use STL maybe. So at this moment it's more the complexity of the program that slows things down, to design at least, or the development. So let's just map a key to a set index here. Yeah, so I'm still implementing what I designed while I was walking in the forest. Yeah, that if I walk to my parents, I have to walk through the forest for 20 minutes, I think. 15 minutes in between houses. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create those keys, and then I have the engine map the keys to set indexes, guided by hints that the user gives. And well, after it runs a while. So let's say you draw a few frames and then I get some statistics, and then from that it might change it and improve on it. That's basically the idea. Unfortunately, I'm already starting to forget what I was thinking while I was thinking about it during my walk. Highly annoying. What else do we need? Yeah, those are no more, right? Also, this is no longer needed. Create textures. Because we are already private here. I think here is where I want to use this stuff that I just added. That was a renaming of this I just added. It's the key to set index. Reserve binding was added. Standard string generators rename here as well. More renaming. Reserve binding was added. Rename from set to set index. Rename generate declaration to generate a declaration. More rename. More rename. Ja, das kann ich commit is. Clean sheet. Except that I added key and key to a set index, but let's add those then later. I just added them. And then I have to look at this point. Okay, so the current problem is one of the 300 problems that we have is that this add texture ends up in set 0, and it should have been in set 1. And there is no way for my program to figure that out on its own, so I'll just have to pass that. But I don't like to say, you know, add it to set 1. That's a bit too specific. Then I have this 1 there again. What is the 1 doing there? So instead, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to create a key for a start. I made this key unique relative to mshare input data. So that's maybe a bit too much. I'm not sure. What the hell, really? Where's that thing? Yeah, it's part of the characteristic range. Okay. With a fix me. Super annoying that this fix me is still here. Not even sure that it belongs here. Yeah, I'll translate that. I have no idea what I'm doing. So anyway, it is part of the characteristic range, which means that it is part of there. Characteristic is derived from characteristic range. So it's part of characteristic then. And that means that it's part of uniform buffers test pipeline characteristic base, which subsequently is used as a base class for uniform buffer test pipeline characteristic 1 and 2. So both have this shader input data object. So they both have a different context for the keys that I added. Well, if I create different instances, I'm not really creating anything. They're just being passed to pipeline factory as a characteristic. But, well, if you look at add characteristic, then that does the following thing. It creates it. We do a new characteristic, so it is the thing is that characteristic 1 thing is allocated on the heap here, and then added to the factory. And I have 2 factories, 1 and 2, and then one gets added. That's this one, and factory 2 gets added that one. So I really have 2 different instances. And then when the factories are running, which happens by calling generates pipelines, in this case just one pipeline. Because I think that, oh, now I have multiple generates. Well. Factory handle generates, calling pipeline factory generates, is signaling full initialized, so factories are already running, I guess then. So they have to look at forget it. Did I write it now, or didn't I write it? Added an empty line. Descriptor window.h. Okay, enough talking. I'm going to think about my code and make some progress again. I wonder if my new key can be default constructed and then assigned later. Probably nice. Doesn't look like it can. It's a const. I have to initialize it immediately. Duh. Not that happy with that. Not happy with that. The problem is, I want most likely want it just to be part of whatever, like the window, and that means that yeah, that must be unique within the window. I mean, if it's a part of the window, so then I need my context to be part of the window and not part of the shader input data. Which I have to admit kind of makes sense. I think that the set indexes are definitely they only have a meaning within yeah, the context of some specific shader input data object. But the descriptor keys that I just invented do not. They must be unique in a larger context so that I can manipulate and use them already before I start generating pipelines. I think that was one of the ideas, that they become more, what is the word, tangible or something like that. I don't know, is that a word? Weet ik veel, ik ben geen native English speaker. Tangible meaning. Perceptible by touch. Yeah, well, no. Well, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, if that is true, then they do need an external context for this thing. And I really don't want to spell it out as a unique, of a utils unique ID context. So I'm going to wrap that in a key context. So I'm going to make a key context. And then we remove remove the context from the pipeline. I think that's shader input data. Descriptor key context. Rather the identifier key to set index. Well, let's remove the context here and put that instead in here. Oops, I should also have moved the include then. This is also a header. Once. So I need to include set. This is in descriptor, so I just should have set index here. I think Control T and then next, and then I can print it here. Yes. And size type is that known? What does this all include? Batch atomic concepts. Yeah, I don't know what that all includes. C standard def. Yep, size type. It's a standard size type, but still. Maybe I should call it a standard size type. I don't know how many size types I use in my program, really. That are not in STD. Okay, so now I need to add to my program. What is a different window? This is in descriptor and this is in vulkan. So I just go to test again. Uniform buffers. Window.h. Thinking. Let's add to the window, which I have here, the context. Context. So descriptor key contexts. And then I'm going to add the keys because they have to be hard-coded-ish. Might as well stress that and make them const. And I'm going to call those, well, I don't know. I only have one descriptor set in this whole program. No, not. I have three of them. Three? Yeah. Top. Explicitly 3 descriptor sets. So that is then the top descriptor set. So that is the descriptor set that contains the uniform buffer that contains the coordinates of the top of the triangle. So I have a triangle, triangle. The top can be moved horizontally, the left side can be moved vertically, and the bottom side can also move horizontally. And those coordinates are floats, and they are passed by uniform buffers. There they are. And I put them in different descriptor sets. I don't know why anymore, but might as well put them in the same. But this program puts them in different ones. So and I'm going to give them now a name. So I know by name which descriptor set it is, without saying that it is descriptor set 0 or 1 or 2. It's just an abstract key. So this is a key. And that then has to be constructed by passing the context. And likewise we have that for the left one and the bottom one. Does my key context. Okay, let's write this and then make C tags. And then go back. And then have a look at key context. And that does not include key. Okay. And key does also not include context, but it should, because I'm using it. Oh, that's nonsense. Unique ID includes context. Why am I including that? The key context is not included. But I'm not going to pass unique ID context anymore directly. Now I'm going to pass the descriptor. We are in descriptor, so I'm just including here the key context. H. And that's what we are passing here. Which then might as well also have get ID, I guess. I'm going to use a batch here. So I'm going to add a get ID to key context that may only be accessed by key. That's get ID. Utils batch key const. Is it const? It cannot be const. And it returns it's a bit vague to have shader resource now here, although that's what it is being used for. But I'm going to remove that. Key context. Yeah, hello, Mr. Sir Sanely. How is you? Return key context get ID. Which I believe is not const, right? Of course it's not const. It cannot be const. Remember that it's not const. I'm just not 100% sure. The horror. Get ID. How many get IDs will I have? Oh, we are already there. And no, it's not const. Great. So now to the key constructor I can pass a reference to a key context, which I just added a get ID to with a badge, and then we get whatever we need, and we put that in here. And then if it compiles, it works. That's type safety that we get here. And yes, that's how I'm constructing them here. What I pass is a key context. Let me see if this compiles. The feeling I'm missing all kinds of headers. Most importantly, this key includes key context, so I do not have to include key context. Key context includes unique ID, so I already have that as well. But I do not include batch yet. Include utils batch .8. Yep, then we have to include descriptor key.h to this file. I'm again sitting in the pitch dark. Too lazy to get up and turn on the light, but sometimes I have to look at my keyboard. That's annoying. Only sometimes though. Okay, let's write just everything and compile. I'm going to turn on my light. Yep. And the Sir left. Or YouTube is crazy. Right. Got to wonder why he left. Everyone left now. According to YouTube anyway, so also nobody in the chat. Sanely Sir is still in the chat. Yeah, I suppose you are hearing me. Yep, but it's time for me to eat. So I probably should quit the stream. What do I have now here? Lots of compile errors. I love compile errors. You have no idea how much I love them. Use of undeclared identifier. Identifier. That's a beautiful one. Who made that up? Identifier. It's nonsense. Identifier? What the hell? iGold. Hello. Identifier. What the descriptor. It is 20:46, so a 8:45 in the evening, obviously. I think I did eat almost nothing. But well, it's good for losing weight. I think I'm now 68 kilograms. Half a year ago I was 75 kilograms, so now 68. It's going in the good direction. We have more. Problems here. No type named key to set index and namespace vulkan descriptor. Well, I'm pretty sure there is. So I guess I just forgot to include. And it's such a waste of time of human resources that you have to manually include all those headers. I mean, come on. They could have fixed it 30 years ago. Automatic inclusion of headers whenever you miss one. It's beyond me. I could also fix this, that I don't have to scroll up anymore. Because I just want to find the last of the first error, really. I already use the error limit is 2, but I have 32 cores, so it's printing 64 errors anyway. Error, use of undeclared identifier key. It doesn't stop there, does it? Adding headers. Wasting everyone's time. Include the latest file first and the standard library files last. Error, use of undeclared identifier key. Again, really. How often do I have to edit my files and add includes? Give me another missing include. I dare you. I dare you. Come on, where is it? Use of undeclared identifier key without blushing. It is just getting started, told me. In this case there's something weird going on because this is already include key.h here. What is going on? Oh, sorry. Circular header include. I guess everyone includes each other, and then things go wrong. Key context. Yeah, key needs key context, and key context needs key. That's not working. That's not working. Let me edit both of them. a good look. I have the feeling that it's just these two. This one includes key, and this one includes context.h. Solution is, go back and forward and think for a while. I don't know how many other files are including that. Include key.h, GPS, set index and key context. Key context. Just uses key. No, that was the one. Damn it. Not context. This one. Okay, that's not circular. Well, let's guess that we do something like if not defined descriptor key context h define key context.h do we really need a key? Batch key. I think we need it. Although batch is not really using it, is it? Batch is not using it at all. Or is it? No, it's not. Is it not? Are you sure? Types. Types. Get nth type. Does that work with an incomplete type? Friend incomplete type. Oh, why not? It might just work. It might just work. Basically, I don't need to include key here, which means that I might as well keep using the pragma. I think this will work. I mean, class key. No need for that. Utils, yeah. Let's try this. So it was cheating, see? I dared it to show me another place where I forgot to include a header, and then I just cheated. It used a circular include to make me think. C++ requires a type specifier for all declarations. No variable conversion from returned value of that's something else. Oh, it is something else. I just forgot the return type here. Yeah. What this returns is the same thing as the other get ID. Yeah, unique type, unique ID. Compile. Voodoo chicken. What? It found another one. Oh, I just forgot the namespace. Feels like 5 more compile errors and then we are done. And then I'm going to eat, I think. We're getting close. Use of undeclared identifier descriptor. Did you mean vulkan descriptor? Descriptor with vulkan descriptor. No. Okay, that's better. Okay, make. What do you think? 4 more or it's done? It is done. It compiles. Okay, so now I should go eat. I have nothing in the house, so it's kind of probably going to eat soup again, the 3rd time this week. I'm using NeoVim, NVim. Yay, NeoVim. Install now. Oh, I already have it. I'm using it. About vision, roadmap. It's all there. If you want my colors, then you need something else. Then you need my repositories. I have a special repository that explains how to set up these colors. It's called something like, so you get the GitHub, Carl Wood, and then something with true color something. Just scroll over the 75 or so repositories and you'll find it. What is this? Okay, so now I'm making a unique keys, 3 unique keys, all right? What was the bloody idea? I can keep coding, but I had an idea with it. Okay, my idea was that next I would say which key something belongs to. I just have to do that, right? It's just no way around it. So I do it somewhere. I'm adding stuff, and the only shader resource that I'm adding are textures. Reserve binding, really, bloody hell! I really have to. Yeah, implement the other thing, right? Add texture. Sample texture is always part of the top descriptor set. Yep, so here I'm passing set indexes, and if I want to hide that, then I would just pass all of these 3 things. I think that was basically the idea. Set index. Now the user program, which is this file, does not know anything anymore about descriptor set indexes. In other words, it doesn't care about what is what. It just says that I want to reserve a binding in this set and in this set and in this set. But which is which? I don't know. And I want to add a texture to all that set. Okay, there was something else I was thinking about. What was it? It was so clear when I thought about it, and now it's faded away. The idea was I would say something like, right. I'm vaguely starting to remember. The idea was that I'm passing two lists. A list that where I say that I have a preference for them being equal, and another list that says that I have a preference for them to be unequal. So instead of passing a single thing, I'm passing two things. So I want this to be preferably add texture. No, it's not. No, add texture really has this one thing. Or does it? Well, I call it top descriptor set, but it's just another descriptor set, right? And top not really, it doesn't really have to do with sample texture. It's more like an absolute must in this case. So what if I talk about preferences, then I should say my preference is 100%. It just absolutely has to be in this descriptor set. But in reality, it doesn't, of course. So I can start with 100%, forcing it to put it in this descriptor set, and then later relax it and then see if it still works. And then I might put it in another descriptor set. Who knows? But it would still work. So I have to think about the API that I need to define my preferences. And I'm pretty sure that the idea was that I had two lists. One list with I want them to be the same, and one list with I don't want them to be the same. Let's put this at the end for start. Okay, so yeah, what I need is preference lists. Or is it no, I need lists, and each of them contains then a preference with a pair, like a key and a preference. So how shall we call the new object that contains both a key and a preference? I guess a list is just going to be a vector. I need a new class again. I also need to change add texture or not. Well, it's going to have to be, it's not even fixed yet. Yeah. So I'm going to have to make a new class. Doesn't know what that is really. It has a color. Well, this is a key, and I need to make a and something else key. Shall I just call it preference? The descriptor preference. No, why not? You can always rename it. So much for it is super important to name things correctly. Why is this window in uniform buffers and this window isn't this? Oh, that's the one that I need. So we have key. No, I'm gonna call it preference is a bit vague. I'm gonna call it key preference. Key preference. Namespace vulkan descriptor. Another thing that is all. Why do we not have a macro for this kind of startup stuff? Pragma wants class key preference. I used to make that actually. As soon as I make a new header file, I would type in new header file, key preference, bang, you would have the right thing. But now it feels like a new project, you know. Project scripts to speed things up, and I do not start new projects anymore to alter that. If you do that, then I will not finish anything anymore. So this thing is going to contain a key. And a preference. And then we must be able to construct a thing. Yeah, no way that is going to be just a key, right? It's not even possible, I think. Key contains a unique ID, which is per definition unique. So no, I can only add a constant reference to a key. Well, this is going to be super sophisticated. Namely, you pass exactly what you want to store. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, that was the constructor. Now we have key preferences, and then I can make a vector of those. That is, let's include a header here for this thing. Doodly, where did I add it? Vulkan. Include a vulkan descriptor. Key preference H. That's kind of weird because I'm pretty sure I already have keys. Descriptor key. See? Context and everything. But okay, whatever. So let's make a descriptor. What the hell was that? Descriptor, key preference. Damn it. key preference. To key. And just 1.0 because I'm very sure. If I say that I want something with these keys, then I mean it really. So that's going to be 1.0. And then from that we make a vector, and I'm saying one of these. Yeah. So now I'm passing a vector of a key preference, which is 100% sure. So this basically says this texture must be in the top descriptor set. Now I'm slightly confused about these things, I must say, because it's not clear whatsoever which set that is. Looks like it looks like, if I would say reserve binding, which is actually a debug hack. I might lose it in the future. Maybe we should just go back to hardcode the set indexes here. It's just a hack anyway, right? Yeah, it's a hack. Is it a hack? No, I'm not so sure anymore. The problem is here that I want to reserve binding in 3 different sets. And at this point, I don't know yet which key is which set. So they might be the same set. This is kind of pointless. The code will not know what to do. So I have to map the keys to sets before I do this. I think that what would happen is that when I call this, it's going to say, okay, you have a key here, and it is not assigned yet. So I'm going to assign that to set number 0. And from that moment on, this is mapped to 0. So if after this line I call this line, then it says, okay, I assigned this to 0, so let's do that. Let's reserve a binding in set 0. Now the other two, they are floating a bit because they don't have textures, they only have uniform buffers. So in the end the code is going to read at uniform buffer 3 times, passing these things, which assigns each key to a set, and then I can do this. Let's say I delete this and I put it below here. And then here we're going to have something like add uniform buffer. That then must be a uniform buffer, of course. Something, comma, vector. And I just use the same keys. Top first, why not? Okay, let's see if I can find my uniform buffers here back here. These things, utils vector. Frame, oh boy, oh my god, yes. Horror, pure horror, pure horror. These things need to be, that's not just one of them, no, for each frame resource index there is one of them. And I didn't implement that yet. So in the end I'm going to have multiple uniform buffers, one for each frame resource index. And then it rotates over the frame resource index as well as going. And I have to implement that too. Right now I haven't implemented it. That doesn't make things easy, does it? That does not make things easy at all. So what shall I pass? Shall I just pass index 0? And then later fix that, or shall I just immediately pass the whole vector and then, so like figure it out? Figure it out. But these are my uniform buffers, so yeah. Pure horror. Let's see how they are being used at the moment. I run over all the frame resources. And place back. No, I have no idea what this is. What is this? And place back called on m top buffer. M top buffer is a vector. So this just in place back, but then sorry, it's in place. And place takes arguments of the constructor. So these three are then used to construct. To construct whatever the element is of this vector. So the memory uniform buffer is constructed from these three elements. And the debug name includes the index of the mtop buffer vector. So I am constructing multiple of them already. But here I'm only using begin. It's only the first one. And again, only the begin. And again, only begin. So yeah, I construct all of them, but then I'm only using the first one. So that has to be fixed at some point. Well, I might as well cheat here then. No, that was the name. What is the name? I forgot the name. M top buffer. And then let's just cheat and pass a single one. Left buffer. So the first index of that thing is just a uniform buffer. And I'm adding a preference with 100% certainty, like forcing for the top descriptor. So this is going to be linked to top descriptor, and then this one is going to be linked to the left descriptor, and well, then my engine is going to say, well, okay, whatever. I'm making them the same set, and that would work. But I don't want that. So I'm also going to pass a vector of what it is not allowed to be part of. So now I'm forcing it to make this a different descriptor set, because I say it must be part of left descriptor set key, and it cannot be part of top descriptor set key. And that then forces that the left descriptor set key points to a different descriptor set. And then again here, it must be bottom descriptor set key, and it is not allowed to be either this one or that one. Okay, that was what I was thinking of while I was walking through the forest today. I'm glad I reproduced that in code now. But now I have to implement it, of course. But the idea is that with this interface, it's going to say, okay, these keys are now different sets. Then it assigns them random numbers, like 0, 1, and 2, because they must be different. And then here I add a texture, again forcing it to be part of top. So if that was set 0, then it's going to add the texture to also to set 0. And then I reserve a binding in the 3 sets, which are now different, causing the texture in the end to be put in binding 1 instead of 0, because that then is already being used here. Binding 0 is reserved. And that then should basically reproduce what it is currently doing, even though I'm not implementing add uniform buffer at all, except for the reservation and assignment here. I'm going to do that tomorrow, I think, implementation of add uniform buffer, because now I'm going to eat something and then play some Risk, I think. Anyone interested to see me play Risk? Probably not, I only have one viewer. Okay, so that was it. Doesn't compile.